My mother-in-law secretly DNA tested my toddler to prove I was cheating. At Sunday dinner, she slid the envelope to my husband with a smile. The results destroyed her, not me. The envelope was already on the hallway table when we arrived. I saw it the moment Mark opened Patricia's front door. A manila envelope, standard letter size, positioned at the center of the console table between the ceramic lamp and the dish where Patricia kept her keys, placed there deliberately. Staged, the way Patricia staged everything, with the careful aesthetic sense of a woman who understood that the positioning of objects communicated intention before a word was spoken. She was in the kitchen when we came in, calling out a greeting over the sound of the oven timer. Mark kissed her cheek. Lily ran for the cookie drawer. Warren, Mark's father, looked up from the living room television and waved. Normal. All of it entirely normal. The practiced rhythm of a Sunday dinner we had attended for 7 years. I looked at the envelope. I knew what was in it. I had known for 11 days. The question I had been sitting with, the one I had turned over in bed at 2 a.m. every night since the lab called me at work, was not whether Patricia had done what I knew she had done. It was whether to let the evening play out exactly as she had planned it. My attorney, Rebecca Chu, 15 years in family law, direct, methodical, the kind of lawyer who emails you at 7 a.m., had been clear. Let her play her hand. You need witnesses. The moment you tip her off, she cries, apologizes, and nothing structurally changes. Let the room see it. I had followed that advice for 11 days. Patricia called us to the table at 6. I sat down. I placed my napkin in my lap. I accepted the bread basket from Warren. I watched the envelope get carried from the hallway and set beside Patricia's chair, and I felt my heartbeat in a single steady line, and I waited. Let me tell you about Patricia Atwood before I tell you what happened at that table, because none of this makes sense without her. Patricia was 61, the wife of Warren Atwood, the mother of Mark and his younger sister Courtney. She had been a dental hygienist for 22 years before retiring at 58, and she carried that professional precision into everything she did. The Sunday dinners were always plated correctly, the holidays always coordinated, the family photographs always framed and displayed in a way that communicated exactly the story she wanted to tell about who the Atwoods were. She loved Mark the way certain mothers love their sons, completely, primarily, in a way that made every other relationship in his life feel like it needed to earn its place at the table. When we got engaged, she had been warm and organized and welcoming, and I had been grateful, and I had missed entirely, because I was 29 and in love and not yet fluent in Patricia, that the warmth was conditional, that the organization was about control, that the welcome had fine print. I am an occupational therapist. I work primarily with pediatric patients, and the specific skill my training sharpened most was pattern recognition, the ability to look at a collection of behaviors over time and identify the shape underneath them. What is this child doing? What does the pattern tell us? What is the behavior communicating that the words aren't? I apply this at work every day. I should have applied it to Patricia years earlier. The pattern started the day Lily was born. My daughter came into the world with dark hair, thick and soft, the kind that newborns sometimes have and often lose. By her first birthday, it had turned copper red, strawberry curls that caught light in a particular way. Small fires, Mark called them, in the pleased tone of a father who found everything about his daughter extraordinary. The red hair came from my side. My mother had it, her mother before her. A genetic thread running through the women in my family for at least 3 generations, as documented and unremarkable as any other inherited trait. To Patricia, it was a mystery, not privately, publicly, consistently, with the specific social mechanics of a woman who understood that if you say something often enough in front of enough people, with a light enough tone, it begins to calcify into accepted truth. Red hair doesn't run in the Atwood family. Easter dinner, when Lily was 14 months old, said lightly, to no one in particular, smiling, she certainly didn't get that from our side. Thanksgiving, said while touching one of Lily's curls affectionately, in a way that made it impossible to object to without seeming oversensitive. Where do you think she gets it from? A birthday party, said to a cousin's wife who didn't know the family well enough to understand the architecture of the question. I kept count in a notebook. Not because I was planning anything at that point, because I am an occupational therapist and I document patterns. 14 comments in 6 months. Always light. Always smiling. Always just loud enough to carry across whatever room we were in. My own mother, when I described the pattern to her on the phone one evening, said, Danielle, she's trying to suggest something. I know what she's suggesting, I said. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to document it, I said. And wait, the lab called me at 11:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was between patient sessions at the Pediatric Rehabilitation Center where I work, standing in the hallway with a patient file in one hand and a cooling cup of coffee in the other, when my phone showed an unknown Hartford number. Mrs. Atwood, this is Kelly from Geneva Labs. We received a DNA sample for your daughter Lily, submitted by a Patricia Atwood. Our policy requires documented parental consent before processing genetic testing on minors. I'm calling to confirm whether you'd like us to proceed or cancel the request. My coffee cup was in my hand. I remember being very aware of it, very aware of not putting it down too hard. Cancel, I said. Of course. I'll note that in the file. Is there anything, can you tell me how the sample was submitted? What type of sample? A pause. A cheek swab, included with the standard consumer kit. The kit was registered to Patricia Atwood at this address. She read it. Patricia's house. Thank you, I said. Please document this call and retain the cancellation record. Absolutely, Kelly said. I'm sorry for any. It's not your fault, I said. Thank you for calling. I hung up. I stood in the hallway for 30 seconds. Then I called Rebecca Chu. Rebecca Chu had 15 years in family law, was a partner at Aldrich & Chu in Hartford, and had been recommended to me by a colleague whose custody situation she had navigated with the kind of steady, strategic precision that made her reputation. She answered on the third ring. I told her what had just happened. Don't confront Patricia, she said, before I had finished. I know that's the instinct. Don't. I know, I said. I want to understand my options first. Submitting a minor's DNA for testing without parental consent is a violation of Connecticut's genetic privacy statutes. It's potentially actionable in civil court. More importantly, she paused. More importantly, it tells you something about what she's planning to do with the results. She thinks she's going to find something, I said. She's going to try to create a scene, probably at a family event with witnesses she selected. That's the pattern with this kind of behavior. Rebecca was direct. My advice? Let her play the hand. When she shows her cards, make sure there are people in that room who will remember exactly what she said and did. Then call me. We talked for 20 minutes. When I hung up, I did not go to my next patient session immediately. I sat in the break room and opened my laptop. Geneva Labs was the clinical lab, but Patricia had also used a consumer DNA platform. Kelly had mentioned it, a secondary submission, the kind that generates familial match reports through shared databases. The platform name was Family Origins. It was the kind of platform that cross-referenced your sample against a database of millions and generated potential relative matches. Patricia had used Lily's birthday as the account password, 06142019. I want to be clear, I did not hack anything. I knew my daughter's birthday. I typed it into a password field. The account opened. The familial match report had been generated 48 hours earlier. I scrolled to the results. Lily's paternity was not in question. That section of the report showed a 99.998% paternity match to a Mark Atwood profile that Patricia had submitted some years prior. Apparently, she had tested Mark without his knowledge at some point, which I noted and filed and did not process fully in that moment because of what was directly below it. Familial match, potential half-uncle, James M., age 36, Portland, Oregon. I stared at that for a long time. Half-uncle meant James M. shared DNA with Lily at the level that indicated he was either my half-sibling or Mark's. I have one brother, David, age 34, who lives in Austin and whose DNA was not on any platform I was aware of. I had no half-siblings that I knew of. I searched the name attached to the match, James Michael Callahan, born 1990. Adopted at birth through a private agency in Hartford, Connecticut. I opened a second tab. Connecticut adoption records from 1990 were not publicly accessible, but James Callahan had a LinkedIn profile, a public Facebook presence, and a profile on an adoptee search forum where he had posted 3 years earlier looking for his biological family. His post said he had been born in Hartford in June of 1990 and placed through a private Catholic adoption agency. He had found no biological matches until recently. Patricia Atwood was born in 1963. She would have been 26 in 1990. She married Warren Atwood in 1992. I looked at the Family Origins profile one more time. The familial match had a tag on it. Another user who had already flagged the connection. The username was Margaret1958. I knew one person named Margaret in the Atwood family. Margot. Mark's Aunt Margot, his mother's older sister by 3 years, who came to every Sunday dinner and sat at Patricia's right hand and had been the person Patricia called first for everything. For 30 years, as far as I could tell, Margaret Ruth Holloway had been her sister's closest keeper of confidences. Margot had known. I saved every page. Screenshots, PDFs, the full export of the match report. I emailed the complete file to Rebecca Chu with the subject line, "See attached. Call me when you can." Then I closed the laptop and went to see my next patient, a 6-year-old named Theo, who was working on fine motor coordination, and I sat across from him and guided him through an activity, and I was fully present for it, because Theo needed me to be present, and because the ability to compartmentalize is something I had developed over years of working in a field where you cannot bring one child's pain into another child's session. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I drove home at 6. I did not tell Mark. Not yet. I needed to see the room first. Rebecca called me the following morning. "The match is consistent," she said. "Based on the centimorgan count in the report, James Callahan shares approximately the right amount of DNA with Lily to be her half-uncle, not a more distant relative, which means he is almost certainly either your half-brother or Mark's." "He's not mine," I said. "I know," she said. I did the math on the timeline. Patricia was 26 in June of 1990. Unmarried. She married Warren 2 years later. Silence. "She gave up a child," I said, "before her marriage, and she has spent 7 years, the entire time I've been in this family, questioning whether my daughter was Mark's." "Yes," Rebecca said. I sat with that for a moment. "She was going to use that envelope to blow up my marriage," I said, "at a family dinner, with witnesses. That appears to be the plan," Rebecca said. "Okay," I said. "Then we let her. The thing about waiting, real waiting, the strategic kind, not the passive kind, is that it requires you to behave normally in the interim. And normal behavior while you're carrying something this heavy requires a level of sustained performance that I did not fully appreciate until I was 3 Sundays into it. I made small talk with Patricia at the October over dinner. I admired the pot roast. I watched her touch her pearl earring when she was confident, and I cataloged it, the way I cataloged everything, and I said nothing. Mark noticed I was quieter than usual. He asked at home whether anything was wrong. I said I was managing some stress at work. He accepted this, which he wouldn't have if he'd been paying very close attention, but Mark is not a man who looks for subtext in situations where he has no reason to look for it. He trusts me. He had trusted me for 9 years. The trust was not misplaced. I called my own mother on a Thursday evening and told her the shape of it. Not every detail, but enough. She was quiet for a moment when I finished. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to let Patricia hand her own evidence to Mark," I said. "In her own dining room, at her own table, with her own family watching." My mother thought about that. "Your daughter has red hair because of me," she said. "You know that." "I know," I said. "Make sure they know it too," she said. Sunday dinner, November. Patricia's dining room seated 8 comfortably. That night it held Warren, Mark's sister Courtney, Margot and her husband Dennis, their daughter Ellie, and us. The pot roast was excellent. The bread was warm. Lily sat in her booster seat, eating exactly 2 bites of everything and ignoring the green beans, which she does at every dinner, and which Patricia always noticed and never commented on because she was saving her commentary for other things. After the main course, Patricia stood up. "Before dessert," she said, with the composure of a woman who had been rehearsing this, "there's something I want to share with the family." She picked up the manila envelope. She placed it in front of Mark. I looked at my hands in my lap. I did not look at Margot. "Open it," Patricia said. Mark looked at his mother for a moment, the brief calibration of a man trying to read a situation, and then he broke the seal. 15 seconds of silence while he read, "She's mine." His voice was flat, not angry. Flat, the way voices go flat when something is too large to process in real time. He held up the page so the table could see it. "Probability of paternity, 99.99998%. Lily is my daughter." Patricia's smile fractured. The careful control of the last 7 years developed a crack right down the center. "That can't be." "Keep reading," I said, quietly. Page 4. Everyone at the table looked at me. I looked at Mark. He turned to page 4. "The familial match report." He read it aloud, slowly. The way you read something when the words are coming in clearly, but the meaning is still organizing itself. "Potential familial match. James M., age 36, Portland, Oregon. Relationship estimate, half-uncle to Lily Atwood." He put the page down. He looked at me. "Half-uncle," he said. "That would mean he's either your half-brother or mine." "He's not mine," I said. "I've verified that." Mark turned to look at his mother. The turn was slow. Everything in that room was moving slowly. "Who is James?" he said. Patricia's hand rose toward her pearl earring. The gesture she used at every dinner, every moment when her certainty met any kind of resistance. Her hand moving to that earring the way other people reach for a rosary or a lucky coin. 7 years of watching her do it, and I had never understood what it was until now. This time her hand stopped midway, midair, frozen. Margot's fork hit the plate, not dropped, placed deliberately, with the careful sound of a woman making a decision. She stood up. "Trish," she said. "Don't." 2 words. The table understood everything. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. Denser, charged. The silence of a room where something that had been buried for 36 years had just broken the surface. Patricia's voice, when it came, was barely audible. "It was before your father," she said. "I was 25. I wasn't ready. It was a private agency in Hartford. I thought I had handled it." Her eyes were filling. "I thought no one would ever—" "You had a child," Mark said, not a question. "And you spent 7 years—" He stopped. His jaw worked. "You spent 7 years implying that Lily wasn't mine. You tested my wife's daughter without her consent, without my consent, because you were looking for something to hold over her." He picked up the envelope. He held it out across the table toward Patricia. "While you had been hiding something for longer than I've been alive." He looked at his mother steadily. "I think you need to see this," he said. The exact words she had used 20 minutes earlier, said slowly, so she would not miss a single one. Patricia's hand was still frozen midway to her earring. Margot had sat back down and was staring at the tablecloth. Warren, at the head of the table, was very still. Courtney, to my left, reached under the table and found my hand. I let her hold it. What followed was not clean. I want to be honest about that. The dinner ended without dessert. Warren drove Margot and Dennis home. Ellie, who was 22 and had absorbed more than any young person should absorb at a family dinner, texted me the next morning to ask if I was okay, and I told her I was, and I meant it. Mark and I drove home in silence. Lily asleep in her car seat. The streetlights moving across the ceiling of the car in regular intervals. We put her to bed and then sat in the kitchen and he told me what he was feeling, which took a long time, because Mark is not a man who has the language for complex feelings immediately. He needs to hold things before he can name them. He said, "I feel like I've been defending the wrong person for 7 years." "You didn't know," I said. "I should have seen it." "She was careful," I said. "She was very careful." He was quiet. "There's a man in Portland," he said, "who is my half-brother, who was given up for adoption before I was born, and has been looking for his biological family for 3 years. He looked at the table. He has no idea what's been happening here." I had thought about James Callahan a great deal over the past 11 days, about what it meant to have spent 36 years looking for where you came from, and to have the answer be a woman who had buried you so completely that she had turned her attention to destroying someone else's marriage, rather than consider the possibility of being found. "What do you want to do about it?" I asked. "I want to reach out to him," Mark said. "If he wants to know, then we do that," I said. Mark looked at me for a long time. You've known for 11 days, he said. Yes. You sat through 2 Sunday dinners. Rebecca said to wait for witnesses. A pause. Rebecca was right. He shook his head slowly. Danielle, you are terrifying. I'm an occupational therapist, I said. We document patterns. He laughed. It was small, and it was tired, but it was real, and I put my hand over his on the table, and we sat there in the kitchen for a while, in the particular quiet of 2 people who have just come through something and are taking stock. The formal legal piece moved through Rebecca's office over the following 6 weeks. The civil complaint she filed on my behalf cited violation of Connecticut's Genetic Information Privacy Act, specifically the provision prohibiting genetic testing of a minor without documented parental consent. Geneva Labs' call record, time-stamped and documented, served as the foundational evidence. Rebecca described it to me as a clean violation with clear documentation, which in legal terms is about as good as it gets. Patricia did not contest it. Her attorney, a man named Douglas Farr, 20 years in civil defense, who called Rebecca in week 2, communicated that his client wished to resolve the matter without further litigation. The settlement terms included a formal written acknowledgement of the privacy violation, a commitment to cease all unauthorized testing or investigation related to Lily, and a contribution to a trust in Lily's name that I will not specify in dollar terms here, but that Rebecca described with professional restraint as appropriate to the violation. The DNA privacy issue was one part. The other part was personal, and it moved more slowly, and it is still moving. Mark reached out to James Callahan in December through the Family Origins platform with a message that took him 4 drafts to write. He sent me each draft. The final version said, I believe we may be half-brothers. I want you to know that if you've been looking, you are not unknown. I'm not sure what you've been told or what you want, but I'm here, and I'd like to talk if you're willing. James replied within 12 hours. He flew to Hartford in February. I made dinner. Mark met him at the airport. I watched the 2 of them come through the front door and I saw it. The thing that genetics does. The echo of one person in another, in the set of their shoulders, the way they both paused in the doorway and looked around the room before speaking. Lily ran to James immediately because she was 3 and had decided in approximately 4 seconds that he was interesting, and James crouched down to her level with the instinct of someone who was good with children, and he looked up at me over her head with an expression that I didn't have a word for. Patricia has not been to Sunday dinner since November. Warren comes alone, occasionally, and he and Mark have the careful, rebuilding conversations of a father and son who are trying to find the ground under a thing that's shifted. It is slow. I think it will be okay. I have not spoken to Patricia directly. Rebecca advises against it, and I have become very good at taking Rebecca's advice. Margot called me in January. I answered because I was curious what she would say. She said, I should have told someone. I know that. I've known it for 36 years. A pause. I thought I was protecting her. You were protecting her, I said. Not him, not me, not Mark. She didn't say anything. He's a good person, I said. James, you would like him. Another pause. I'd like to meet him, she said, quietly, if he's willing. I told her I'd ask. 7 months later, Lily's hair is longer now, the curls looser as she grows. She has her father's gray eyes and my mother's hair, and the particular laugh of someone who has not yet learned to make it smaller for other people's comfort. I still keep the notebook, not because I'm tracking anything new, because it is the record of a pattern that was real, and real things deserve to be documented. The notebook sits in the same drawer as the screenshots, the lab call record, Rebecca's file summary, and a photograph that James sent me in March. Him and Mark at a bar in Hartford, both of them mid-laugh, shoulders almost touching, the genetic echo unmistakable in the line of their jaws. I look at that photograph sometimes. Patricia had spent 7 years trying to use DNA to unravel my marriage. What it unraveled instead was the secret she had carried longest. The test she ordered to expose me exposed her.